Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City. He jumps on board, of course, to talk some birds on a Wednesday here, Dave. And about halfway through this season, we talked a little bit last week about Carson Wentz, but, man, the mythical figure that is Carson Wentz took another step in the direction. The game you saw from him on Monday night, that one's one for the ages, man.
Yeah, it sure was. I mean, he got off to a little bit of a rocky start because of the penalties and stuff and seemed to have a little bit of trouble getting into his rhythm. But once he did, boy, that was something to see. It was just like an amazing performance, both just, throwing the ball, escaping out of trouble, meeting with the family of the kid who passed away from cancer. I mean, it was just an inspirational, amazing kind of night for Carson.
It really was, and those are the kind of nights, like that game there, some of the plays, when you're watching, McNabb in his prime, he had a couple of plays, the one where he's scrambling all over the place, and he finds Freddie Mitchell down the field, his 4th and 26, the throw he makes to start the year off to T.O. I mean, there are certain plays that these guys make that kind of make them memorable players. Randall had a bunch of them, the Carson play, him firing the ball from the end zone, 99-yard touchdown pass. He had a couple of those plays on Monday night that you will always remember now.
Yeah, that was like a signature game for him. I mean, he's always shown the potential to be something special, but I'm really starting to believe that's the case. That if he keeps making plays like he's made on Monday night, I mean, he's really going to make quite a name for himself, and maybe even surpass Donovan as the best in Eagles history. Obviously, he has a long, long way to go to reach that level, but he's well on his way, I think.
He was, by the way, the NFC Offensive Player of the Week with his 4 touchdown passes. He leads the league in touchdowns, and, there's so many things we could talk about positive with Carson Wentz, and he did it again with his legs, too. I mean, in a week where we heard a lot about, they're telling him not to take the hits, and he's got to be more protective of himself. He led the team in rushing the other night.
Yeah, it was just that one play in the fourth quarter where he just seemed like there was 10 guys all around him, and then all of a sudden he just pops out for a 17-yard gain. I didn't know that he had that kind of versatility in him. I mean, being a big guy like 6'5", 240, you wouldn't expect him to have that kind of mobility, but he does. He reminds me of, I hate to keep throwing out these superlatives, but if you think back to Ben Roethlisberger when he first came into the league, a big guy who could run, he's kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Yeah, and the one difference is you say big guy that can run. It wasn't that Roethlisberger could run. He could elude and get out. Carson, when he gets going, he's actually – he can move. He can run.
Yeah, he's got more speed than I thought. But then again, you realize he was a basketball player and a baseball player in high school, so he has that athleticism in him. But yeah, it's one thing to do it like at North Dakota or in high school, but to do that in the NFL when everybody's as big as fast as you are, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun talking about a guy like this. Frank Reich was asked about him today and said, what plays surprised you the most? And he says, well, we're not easily impressed, but I will comment on it. I mean, even the coaching staff impressed by some of the plays he made, including that play. Dave, take us through the play to Corey Clement, because I really thought that both players made great plays on that, Corey and Carson.
Yeah, I thought Carson was going to get sacked there, but he kind of fought off the defenders because he's not only is he big, but he's pretty strong too, and he showed it there. But yeah, just found a way to find Clement open. He was the last option, the 5th or 6th option, I think, and lofted it up there. Yeah, and I don't think Corey's getting enough credit for the play that he made too. That was a pretty acrobatic catch that he made with a guy, defender all over him, leaps up in the air, gets both feet down, and you don't expect that from a running back, let alone a rookie free agent running back. But he's showing that he can come through when called upon.
Dave, it was awesome to go 6-1 on Monday Night Football in front of our home crowd. To face adversity down 10-3 and all that, but we did come out with 2 huge losses in Jordan Hicks and Jason Peters. Please, how can Eagle fans start to feel better about this season when, although you got the victory, it was a moot point?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. The injuries just keep piling up for them, and I don't know how much longer they can continue to, they always talk about the next man up, but they're running out of men to move up there. It seems like, every game almost they get a guy that's lost either for a couple weeks or even in this case, for the entire season. And these two injuries are going to be particularly hard to overcome, I think. Jordan is the quarterback of the defense, and he's the guy responsible for putting the front seven in the right positions, not only besides making plays. I don't know that is as big as loss, because I think that Michael Kendricks, assuming he's recovered from his hamstring problem, I think they played nickel defense most of the time anyway, so if you just put Kendricks in there with Bradham, I think you'll be okay. If you have to go to a base defense, you're in trouble, though, because I don't think Najee Good or Joe Walker honestly know what they're doing yet. So they're going to be better off with a nickel defense as much as possible. And Peters, he's not the best left tackle in the league anymore, but he's still in the top 10. And just his experience and his savvy, that's going to be really difficult to replace. I know they're it seems like they're going to be putting Vaitai on the left side and keeping Lane where he is. That just seems the way it looks like to me, because Lane's done a pretty good job of handling some elite pass rushers. He's got a couple more coming up to face him, like Von Miller and Khalil Mack. So I think the tendency, the likelihood is probably that Lane stays on the right side. But you're right, both of these injuries are pretty big. But I guess as long as Carson stays healthy, they still have a shot.
And it's funny that you mentioned Vaitai, because that's what my next question was going to be. Vaitai came in midway through that game, and they did score 2 touchdowns after Peters went out. Now, listen, Kerrigan did go over there, on a couple third downs, but Vaitai seemed to hold his own. Is Vaitai more valuable on that left side? Can he be that left tackle of the future that we all expected Lane Johnson to be?
Oh, I wouldn't go that far. I kind of think Lane is the answer there. I think that's why they drafted Lane, to be the left tackle of the future and take Jason's spot.
So why are they hesitant then to just say Lane's our guy, Peters is done for the year, we're going to make the move now? It seems that their answer is always, we don't want to move 2 guys, we just want to make one change. That seems they did that last year too in this situation. Yeah,
I think that this year the case is, it seems like Lane is the guy who's been facing the top pass rushers, and because he's having such a pretty good year, he's been proven able to handle that, except for missing the game with the concussion. But other than that, he's been playing really, really well. And I guess they just don't want to, like you said, upset the apple cart and sacrifice 2 positions instead of 1. And as I mentioned, you have Von Miller, you got Khalil Mack, you got a couple other guys coming up that rush the passer from the left side of the defensive line. So I think that Lane is probably better equipped to handle those kind of guys than Vaitai is.
Yeah, and, the one thing last year was they had Alan Barber that played right tackle pretty good. They decided to keep him at guard. They gave us the same spiel. He's playing so good at left guard, we don't want to move him out of that spot. It's almost like you're saying, well, we don't think Lane Johnson can play better left tackle. It's almost, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's true. Although I think part of the reasoning is they probably just want to keep the guy in one spot for the season, and when they make this move, it's going to be like in training camp next year, I think, because the likelihood of Jason Peters coming back is pretty slim. So I think they just want to maintain some sort of semblance of consistency. Having just Lane on the right side there with Brandon Brooks, they seem to work really well together. I know they're really close off the field too, and they seem to have this chemistry working that you don't always get, but it takes some time for an offensive line to develop that. So I think you got to think about the guy next to you too, and then that seems to be the case with Lane and Brooks on the right side.
So, Dave, it's interesting because you just said that Lane Johnson is going to be that guy on the left side in the future, possibly next year in training camp. Does that mean that the Eagles have to go out and get a right tackle maybe in the draft or a high in free agency to kind of replace that side where Lane is going to leave vacant?
Unless they think Vaitai is the answer on the right side. They seem to be pretty high on him. Personally, I think I would probably go after, a stud offensive lineman in the draft or free agency, like you mentioned, because I don't know that Vaitai is the answer. I mean, I guess we'll find out in the next couple of weeks whether he's able to be that right tackle of the future, even if he's going to be playing on the left side. But if they like what they see over the next 8 games or 9 games or whatever, then I think that they'll stick with him. But otherwise, I would personally go after a guy in the draft.
Well, and it also seems, by the way, Dave Weinberg, Press of Atlantic City, Eagles beat writer, with us here. Mike Gill, Deshaun Hendricks, Sports Bash 513. It seems that they're getting more comfortable with Isaac Seumalo not being a starter and being more of that now swing guy that can play guard, play center, and now even play tackle.
Yeah, they seem to like him too. Why, I don't know, but yeah, they kind of like his versatility. They like to have their linemen play more than one position if they can. It seems like they like those guys who can play, center and play guard, like Wisniewski. I think Chance Warmack is probably just a guard, but the majority of those guys are able to switch around in multiple positions, and Seumalo is one of those guys. They like to have at least one guy as a backup who they can plug in, at a variety of positions without losing anything.
Yeah, Dave, and there's a lot on this team with depth. Matt Collins is a guy. He was asked today about Frank Reich was asked about him. Targeted 6 times, 6 catches for 134, 5 first downs, and a touchdown, a big play the other night. And you wonder if about 8 games through the season with these rookies that you start to see some of the starting players be reevaluated, and maybe you see more of the younger players who maybe weren't ready early in the year. Is Matt Collins one of those guys?
He's certainly a guy who can contribute, especially considering Torrey Smith really hasn't had that breakout season that they were hoping for as a deep threat. So I could see a scenario where Mac gets more opportunities on offense. I mean, they brought him in here to play special teams, but he's proven that he deserves more than that he deserves that opportunity to be a part of the offense. I don't know about playing. I don't think they were necessarily going to a youth movement yet, though. I mean, they're in position to do something special this year in terms of the playoffs and maybe even the Super Bowl. So I think they're going to stick with the guys that they have for the moment anyway.
Yeah, and I'm not saying full-blown youth movement. I'm just talking about guys that, that just were rookies and they weren't ready early, but now they're ready to contribute and make this almost like making a trade or getting a guy back from a guy that is getting it now and will make you better just because he's now more prepared than he was back in September.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you could see certainly with Derek Barnett. I mean, he's going to get more snaps, I think, at defensive end, having the 2 sacks the other night. And he's a guy who's really seemed to have come on in the last couple of weeks. He got off to a little bit of a slow start, it seemed, but he's one of those younger guys who, like you mentioned, that they're going to get more opportunities as the season goes on because they've earned it.
But Dave, I mean, you go against the teams like Seattle. And as you get deeper into this, season and you get into the playoffs, don't guys like Torrey Smith and guys like that have to produce? Because these guys are going to say, hey, listen, we know Torrey's not catching the ball or he's not really getting the ball, so we're not going to cover him the same as Washington did this week or Arizona did a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, ideally you want him to play and you want him to produce, but he hasn't done it yet. I mean, except for, a play here or there. He's had a couple, but They have to go with whoever's going to produce for them, whether it's Matt Collins, whether it's Torrey Smith, whoever. They're just going to ride the hot hand, I think. And if Mac proves that he deserves more reps than Torrey, then they'll go that way. I mean, there is something to be said, though, like you mentioned, for experience and that veteran presence. And Torrey has that going for him, but he's got to start producing pretty soon, or I think Mac's going to usurp him a little bit.
Yeah, and he is providing a service. It's just not numerically.
Right. I mean, he does scare defenses. You have to account for him when you send him deep. They can't just leave him alone. And he's starting to hold on to the ball better than he was earlier in the year. So I think you'll see both Torrey and Mac be factors down the stretch, to be honest with you. I think they'll find ways to get both of them on the field.
Now, Dave, if I was the sports editor of the Press of Atlantic City and I said, Dave, I want you to write a story on the Eagles' best wide receiver, which guy are you picking?
Nelson Agholor.
Are you surprised by that? If I'm Mark and I say, what? Explain yourself, Dave. Explain yourself. Last year, you came to me with a column idea that he needs to go. He's the worst receiver on the team.
Yeah, that's true. He was. But, it's funny what a difference a year makes, I mean, he's just been nothing short of fantastic. I mean, he's catching everything that's going to him, yards after the catch, pretty creative touchdown celebrations. I mean, he's doing it all. You He's easily the best wide receiver on the team. I mean, he's tied with Zach Ertz for the most touchdown receptions. He leads all the Eagles wide receivers in receptions. So yeah, you can't. I mean, he really made a turnaround since last year. So I guess that's the reason why I'm going that way.
Crazy how you're right, and it looks like on third downs, if it's not Zach Ertz, he goes for Agholor. It seems that Wentz is going to Agholor.
Yeah, and I think there might be something because of the fact that they played together last year. I mean, Agholor, for sure, he struggled as a year ago, or even the last 2 years, to be honest with you. But they seem to have developed a little bit of a rapport. But Zach is still his security blanket. He's the guy that he goes to,
no doubt,
the most. But Nelson's come on a little bit. I mean, it seems like Wentz has a little bit of a chemistry with him too, and it's kind of nice to see. For whatever reason, it doesn't seem like him and Alshon have really been in sync yet, and I'm starting to wonder if they ever will be. To be honest with you, I mean, we're like, almost 8 games into the year, halfway through, and it still really hasn't happened for those two. But I guess if they keep working on it, it'll come through.
Dave, what do you attribute the most to Agholor's success? I mean, is it just him having that confidence, or is it having all these other weapons opening up things for Agholor?
A little bit of both. He's always been a pretty confident guy, except for, last year it really took a hit when he made that big penalty in Seattle and then dropped the pass on the next play, and that really shook him. And he needed a little while to bounce back from that. Fans were on him. Even some teammates, I think, maybe privately were kind of questioning him a little bit. So, but he was a first-round pick, don't forget. And I know there's been some busts over the years, but he definitely has first-round talent if you just watch him on the practice field and stuff or during training camp. So it's just a matter of him getting that mental focus, concentration together with his physical ability, and I think that's what he's done. But you're right. I think also the surrounding cast has a lot to do with it too, because he's no longer the guy. He's no longer has that pressure that he absolutely has to produce. Where you have Alshon and Torrey, LeGarrette Blount, Zach Ertz, all these other guys around him. I think that took a little bit of the pressure off of him, let him just relax and do his thing.
You also just mentioned the fact that Alshon Jeffery and Carson Wentz haven't been on the same page this season. Is it plausible the fact that Jeffery still didn't have a breakout game against a depleted Redskins secondary? Is it just Jeffery needs to just have more time to find his footing, or this is just the guy he is? He's the guy that's going to make plays here or there, but he's never going to have that star #1 receiver game.
I'm starting to wonder, to be honest with you. He was brought in here. Everybody was lauding him as the second coming of T.O. and the legitimate #1 receiver. But honestly, he hasn't been that for a couple of years. I mean, he kind of struggled with Chicago in his last couple of seasons. Got suspended for a few games for violating the PED policy, and I'm starting to wonder if he really is that that go-to legitimate #1 guy. But to be honest with you, I don't think they really need it. I mean, they have enough versatility in that offense where they really don't need a guy to really step forward and be the #1 guy. When you have 3 guys who can be #2s.
But is Jeffrey going to want #1 contract money though? Remember, he's on a 1-year deal.
He might not get it here.
Yeah, he's not going to get it here. I don't think. Not after this year.
We'll see.
I mean, anything's possible.
He seems like he's been a good teammate, though.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he works really well in the wide receiver room with the other guys. Seems to be I don't want to say he's a leader. He just doesn't seem to have that kind of personality to me.
He's bought in, though. I don't care that my numbers aren't where they should be. If it's not me, it's somebody else. It seems like he's saying the right things anyway. Yeah.
He's a very good teammate, yeah. And same like LeGarrette Blount. I mean, he has that reputation of being a little bit selfish. And he seemed a little perturbed after the other night because he didn't get the ball very much, although he did have a huge run in the fourth quarter that allowed them to run out the clock. But, all those guys, I think as long as you're winning, that cures a lot of problems. Nobody wants to upset that apple cart and, start complaining. It's tough to argue when you're 6-1 and you're the best record in the NFL.
Ain't that the truth? Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City covers the Eagles. This week, the Eagles and 49ers. Any concern about overlooking this 0-7 Niners outfit?
I don't think so, but, I mean, if you look at the 49ers record, I know they're 0-7, but they've played a lot of close games. I mean, 2-point losses, 3-point losses. I think 5 of their losses are by 3 points or less. So you got to wonder if they're ever going to break through. I don't think it'll be this week, though. I don't think they'll be able to do that in Philly. But and yet you kind of have to wonder, like, when these injuries are going to start having an impact. And maybe they won't. Maybe I'm wrong, and they'll be able to keep plugging guys in and keep rolling. But I'm starting to be a little bit concerned about the number of guys who have gone down, and not only just the number of guys, but the key guys, Darren Sproles and
by the way, we haven't talked about Jordan Hicks either.
Yeah, Hicks, Peters.
Yep.
I mean, you keep losing guys for the year. That's it'd be nice to get Ronald Darby back.
I was going to say, your intuition, will Darby be back this week, or do they think they could sneak another week through without him?
I don't really know which way they're leaning, only because of the fact that I thought they were going to rest Fletcher Cox against Carolina, and he wound up not only starting but having a great game. So I think it's just whenever guys are ready, they're going to put him back out there. The fact that he practiced last week and was a game-time decision, that lends me to believe that maybe he'll be back on Sunday.
All right, Dave Weinberg from the Press of Atlantic City here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN and the new 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
No, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.